The proclamation spread across the palace halls, like a shockwave that no one could have predicted. Whispers rose between towering crystal pillars as diplomats, guards, and advisors struggled to understand why the youngest royal of the Lumerian Empire had voiced such an unexpected demand. Princess Mira, known throughout the star clusters for her calm spirit and luminous eyes, had stunned the imperial court with only 7 words spoken in a voice steadier than anyone expected. Her future husband must be Earthling. The Empire had never allowed such a request before, because marriage, within their noble lines, was considered essential to safeguard their ancient traditions. Council was certain the Emperor would refuse, because he had never permitted a union with a species whose world had only recently joined the wider galactic network. However, the Emperor listened to his daughter with patience that astonished the entire hall, since he rarely showed softness before the council. Mira stood straight despite the heavy weight of so many eyes, and her shimmering ceremonial robes glowed faintly with each breath, because the robes were woven with living threads sensitive to emotion. She explained that her visions showed a future where union with an Earthling would shift the fate of both species toward strength rather than conflict, and that she trusted her own instincts more than ancient expectations. Most nobles considered humans unpredictable, yet the princess believed their unpredictability came from courage rather than recklessness. Her declaration spread rapidly across the empire, and soon the question arose of which human would be worthy of standing beside her. The council began evaluating candidates, but their process leaned toward individuals with high ranks or elite training, which displeased Myra, because she felt that true character was rarely found on lists. One quiet day, while the council debated names in frustration, the princess wandered into the observation gardens, hovering above the capital, and she looked down at the swirling energy rivers that powered the planet. Standing there alone, she wondered if destiny was waiting somewhere far beyond the palace walls. At the same moment, on the distant world of Earth, a young researcher named David was preparing to depart for a modest interstellar exchange program that promised more curiosity than glory. David was simple in manner, patient with others, and often overlooked by those who valued status more than spirit, but he possessed an unusual ability to understand alien perspectives, something noticed by the program directors. He had no idea that his selection for a minor cultural trip to Lumerian would place him in the center of political storms brewing light years away. When he arrived on the luminous world, he was greeted by the soft brilliance of the floating cities and the melodic hum of energy flowing through crystalline towers that rose like spears of light. He stepped from the shuttle wearing nothing but his standard travel uniform and an honest expression, because he never knew how to be anything but genuine. The delegation expected many visitors, yet somehow Mira sensed someone unfamiliar drawing near the palace. She approached the balcony overlooking the arrival platform and saw David standing quietly at the edge of the procession, looking more like an observer than a participant. She noticed the calm way he examined everything, with fascination rather than arrogance, and his presence felt strangely steady to her. Mira descended to greet the visitors, although she rarely attended such receptions because formality bored her. When she stopped before David, he bowed awkwardly, since human protocol differed from royal tradition, but the sincerity in the gesture brought a faint smile to her face. Their first conversation lasted only a few moments, yet it left an impact on Mira, because David listened rather than rushed to impress, and he spoke with clarity, free of fear, despite standing before a princess of a mighty empire. Over the next days, the exchange program guided visitors across the planet, but Mira sought opportunities to observe this human, who seemed unaware of the commotion surrounding her decree. She saw him help a young apprentice who had dropped a bundle of tools, and she watched him kneel beside a wounded hover creature that had collided with a transport platform, and she noticed how he spoke kindly, even when no one else was around. Word of her interest reached the council, and they grew uneasy because they had hoped she would choose a human of grand status rather than a quiet researcher with no notable lineage. They approached the emperor with concerns, but he surprised them by refusing to dismiss the possibility, since he trusted Myra's intuition more than their fear of tradition. One evening, as the twin moons cast silver light across the palace, Mira invited David to walk through the Star Gardens, a sanctuary reserved for the royal family, where glowing petals floated through the air like drifting constellations. David followed with respectful steps because he sensed the significance of the moment. Mira asked him about Earth, and he spoke of its storms and oceans and forests and the quiet resilience of its people, and she listened with genuine interest because she longed to understand a world shaped by struggle rather than abundance. She then revealed the burden of her responsibility and her vision of a future where their species stood together, not as conqueror and subordinate, but as allies bound by trust. David did not respond with proclamations or heroic declarations because he had none to offer, and instead he simply said he would stand with her in any way that brought peace. The simplicity of his response touched her more deeply than any rehearsed vow a noble might give. However, challenges soon emerged because factions within the empire felt threatened by the possibility of an Earthling entering the royal bloodline, and they argued that his simplicity was weakness. Mira refuted them with unwavering resolve because she had seen how courage was often quiet and how true loyalty never announced itself loudly. When opposition grew louder, the emperor summoned David to the council chamber and asked him directly what he sought from the Princess. David answered with honest sincerity, saying that he sought nothing beyond the chance to help her achieve the harmony she envisioned. The emperor studied him in silence, and the entire chamber held its breath as he assessed the human whose presence had unexpectedly altered the course of imperial politics. In that moment, the emperor saw no greed, no ambition, and no fear. He saw exactly what Myra had described: a steady heart, a gentle spirit, a man who valued life over power. The emperor released a soft exhale and declared that if the princess wished it, and if the human accepted the bond willingly, then no law would stand in their way. The council erupted in debate, but the emperor silenced them because his decision was final. Mira felt relief wash through her like a warm wave because she knew the hardest part of her struggle was now behind her. Yet she wanted David to decide without pressure because tradition meant nothing if his choice was not free. She met him once more in the Star Gardens, where petals drifted around them in silent patterns, and she told him that she wished him to be her future partner, not because of her vision alone, but because he had shown how goodness that she admired. David felt the weight of the moment, but also understood her sincerity. He stepped closer beneath the shimmering branches and told her he would stand beside her willingly because he believed in her dream and believed that their worlds could become stronger through unity. News of his acceptance spread across the empire, and the people reacted with awe because the gentle princess had chosen not a warrior or a noble, but a humble earthling whose character shone brighter than rank. The day of the formal declaration arrived, with crowds gathered across the floating platforms and energy rivers lighting the sky. In vibrant arcs, Mira stepped forward in robes that glowed like dawn, while David stood beside her wearing ceremonial garments crafted with symbols of both worlds. Together, they announced their intention to unite their futures. A hush fell over the crowd as ancient tradition intertwined with new possibility. In that silence, the empire witnessed the birth of a bond that would shape generations, not through power, not through conquest, but through courage shared between a princess of starlight and a human whose quiet strength defied every expectation. And so the story of Mira and David traveled across star systems as a reminder that sometimes destiny favors the hearts that speak softly yet stand firm, even when the universe watches in disbelief.